Hey there, and welcome to a new episode of the Dietitian Success Podcast, the business, marketing, and entrepreneurship podcast specifically created for registered dietitians. My name is Krista Kolajesic, and I am your host. I am the founder of Dietitian Success Center, and every week I sit down and I answer 3 business entrepreneurship related questions that have come up in one of our spaces, whether it's something that I've been asked in the DMs on Instagram, whether it's come up in our community forum, whether it has come up through an on-demand business coaching submission in our entrepreneurship membership. There's always questions floating around. And so therefore, there's always content for me to talk about on this podcast, which is why I love having a platform to be able to share about these sorts of things. But I also always like to start with a little personal update too. What's been going on lately? I just got back from Toronto. I was in Toronto for 3 days checking out the venue for the Dietitian Success Summit. And let me tell you, it's looking amazing. And it was so good to go there in person. So I do not live in Toronto. I live in Calgary, which is about a 3.5 to 4 hour flight to Toronto. The reason why we're hosting in Toronto is because it's the most central location for the most number of dietitians. So what we find is that the highest concentration of dietitians are located in that area, in like Toronto, Montreal, and then in the States in like the Chicago, New York area. And so we wanted to make it somewhere that was really easy for the most number of people to get to. And so anyways, I flew out with my mom and my 6-month-old baby. So my mom was my unpaid nanny, and it was great. We just did a quick in and out, just did a couple work things, checked out the venue, and it was just so great to see it in person because I hadn't seen it in real life yet. I've been working with a friend of mine who's actually an event planner. She lives in Toronto, and so she's been kind of managing the venue side of things. But being able to just go and see it in person just completely, it just made me feel so much more concrete about exactly what this is going to look like in this space. So, just the setup, the table setup, where the speakers are going to be, like where the cocktail hour is going to be, like all of these pieces, I just was able to see it and be there. And it just feels really, really good. And so one of the other things I thought I would do this morning, I was listening to a podcast in the car on my way to drop my son off at daycare and my other son off at daycare. And I was listening to a podcast where they were talking a little bit about threads. And I haven't really done much exploration with threads, but they were really making a case for posting on threads. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh my gosh, another platform that we need to keep up with or contribute to or post on. And no, don't worry. This is not me saying that you should be on threads. This was just hey, maybe I'm interested in exploring this. If I'm already posting on Instagram, maybe I'll come up with a quick note that I can post on threads too. So anyways, this morning I came up with the idea of just sharing on threads, like a bit of a realistic day in the life of what my actual day looks like as a full-time entrepreneur, but then also a full-time mom. So having a 6-month-old at home with me full-time, because I think that sometimes I forget how maybe sometimes chaotic our days seem, or just like full our days seem. And I just think it's kind of interesting to share. I'm always really interested to hear how other people structure their time and what their days look like. And so I thought, well, I shared that on threads, so maybe I'll share that in this podcast too. So what does my day in the life look like right now? Well, I'll talk about today. Now, every day is different, but they all follow fairly similar blocks. So right now I'm in the season of life, which I'm so grateful for, where I can set my alarm for a little bit earlier than when the kids are expected to wake up. So I set my alarm for 5:30 because I know my kids are probably going to wake up at 6:30. And I do that because honestly, when I get up 30 minutes before everyone else and I get to just sit on the couch and have a coffee and like do Wordle and just sit there with myself, everything else feels better in the day. Everything goes better. It just it is so good for my mental health. And so that's what I did this morning. Got up at 5:30, had a coffee on the couch, just like scrolled, did Wordle, etc. And then my husband got my toddler up. I took our dog out for a quick walk. It is a rainstorm out there. Normally I like to go for a little bit longer, but it's terrible weather. So just quick in and out. And then husband got toddler ready for the day. We all had breakfast. Then I took my toddler to daycare. That's usually what I do. I usually do drop off, head home, do handover with our 6-month-old between me and my husband so he can start working. He works from home. I take Ramsey, 6-month-old, and put him down for his first nap. And then while he's napping, I am sitting here recording this podcast. That's where I'm at right now at this point in time. So I sit down and record this podcast, and I'm trying to fit that in before we are doing a team meeting at 9 a.m. for a quick summit touch point. So after the venue tour last week, we're going to just sit down as a team and do a quick touch point on some of the things we need to do. And so I'm going to try and fit that in. Usually Ramsey naps for about 2 hours in the morning. So I have like a 2-hour block. I will then be responding to on-demand business coaching questions. So those are the questions that are submitted through the entrepreneurship membership, the DSC entrepreneurship membership. So I'll be responding to those. I do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then Ramsey will be awake, likely. And then we have his 6-month vaccines. So I got to go over and do that. And then come home. And then it will probably be time for second nap of the day. So I will put him down for second nap, just depending on how long that goes for. I sometimes get more work time. Typically, I'm only working during naps right now. And so that will be like a lot of the podcast post-production stuff. So what I do is I record the podcast, but then I upload the transcript to Claude and do a bunch of post-production stuff, like create an AEO optimized blog post, a LinkedIn post, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all a little bit of work that I have to do after I actually record the podcast. And then there's just a whole bunch of other little to-do list items that I'm hoping to tackle during that time, if I can. And then this afternoon, which I'm quite excited about, I'm actually getting a massage. The place that I go to here has childcare, which is so cool and like such an amazing example of a business that really understands their ideal client. Like they know that like moms, parents with kids still want to be able to like make appointments for themselves. And so I found that so valuable because one of the things that I feel like you don't really realize until you have a baby at home with you full time is that getting an appointment for yourself is really difficult unless you have childcare. So yeah, so going to get a massage because our benefits are expiring or renewing this month. And so I want to be able to use up the rest of our benefits. And then my husband usually does daycare pickup for a toddler. He comes home and then the evening is just like toddler baby time. I make dinner. We are going to just hang out. Usually we go outside when the weather's nice. We go for another little walk, another little dog walk. Usually have to fit in a second walk at some point during that evening. We make dinner and then it's bedtime for the kids. And then usually we have like 45 minutes to an hour to just like sit and watch TV. And then I'm really trying to be sleeping by 9 because, you know, if somebody wakes up in the middle of the night or whatever, or somebody wakes up early, then I know if I've fallen asleep by 9, like I'll still get a good sleep. So, whew, yeah, it's a lot, but you know, it's a different season of life, but it's a fun season of life. It's every day is a little different and we're making it work. We are making it work. So that is my little personal update for you. Let's get into the content. So today we are going to talk about website platforms, and does it even matter which website platform you use, especially in the world of AI? We'll talk through that. We're going to talk through non-one-on-one business ideas if you are going into business and you don't want to work with people one-on-one, or if you want to expand your offer suite and maybe start bringing in some revenue outside of one-on-one. And then we're going to talk about podcasting as a marketing opportunity. And do you need a podcast? Should you have a podcast? What if you don't have enough time for a podcast? We'll get into it. Okay, so let's start with the first question, which is about websites. I'm in the process of building my website and I keep going back and forth between WordPress and the other platforms like Squarespace or Wix. Everyone seems to have a strong opinion about this. Can you break down the actual pros and cons of each so I can make a decision and stop overthinking it? Okay, so first let's talk a little bit about the purpose of your website. So a website is actually so essential. Like it is a must-have in your business. It is an absolute must-have. You have to have a website. You have to have a website so that when people Google you or search for providers like you in ChatGPT, your business shows up. And so that whenever somebody is looking for services like what you offer, you have a place to be able to direct them, a professional place to be able to direct them that gives them all of the information they need to know about you. That's also why like just having Instagram is not enough. We need to have a website. Now, I also talk to a lot of dietitians at the very early stages of their businesses, and they're just interested in getting something super quick and dirty set up so that they can start working with clients immediately. You could just use a Practice Better landing page as like a temporary solution while you are getting your website set up. Just FYI. So this doesn't necessarily need to be like a must-have. You have to have this as your step one, because sometimes this takes a little bit of time for people, especially if you're not super tech savvy. But it should be one of the first things that you do. A website is essential. It is the digital representation of you. Okay, so then this next layer to this is, well, okay, then what platform should I be using for my website? And what's so interesting is that I think the conversation around this has shifted and changed over the last few years as things like AI have been brought into the fold, as the blogging landscape has changed. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll do a little bit of a quick, brief backstory. So I would say 5 to 10 years ago, the belief system was that WordPress was like the best platform to use, because WordPress was it was the best from like an SEO perspective. You know, if you were using WordPress, you could expect that like you were getting the most benefit from an SEO perspective. Now, then some of these other platforms started to come into the mix, and WordPress was kind of like the OG website platform. And then everyone realized that WordPress is actually really hard to use. And so some of these other platforms came onto the scene, like Squarespace and Wix, that make it easier for you to create a website by yourself. But then the question came up, well, but are these website platforms as good from an SEO perspective? And the general sentiment was sort of like, no, they're not quite as good. And there were certain limitations. So for example, like if you were wanting to build a blog and be able to monetize your blog, you know, for a while there, only high-end ad networks would really only plug into WordPress. So it was a lot more difficult to do on platforms like Wix or Squarespace. And so from a blogging perspective, and if you were looking to monetize your blog with ads, then WordPress was really sort of the best place to be. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really know what the like monetization of a blog space looks like right now, because AI has changed a lot of things, right? Like, when is the last time you actually went to a blog to read someone's blog posts? Like, it's just very different than it used to be. Blogging used to be huge. And so people could rely on like huge amounts of traffic coming to their websites to be able to make money off of those ads. Now, again, yeah, with AI usage, like to answer our questions, a lot of us are going to AI now to be able to answer those questions. And so consequently, a lot of people have found that their blog traffic or their website traffic is declining. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that the landscape is changing. And now we need to meet people where they're at in a different way, meaning we need to optimize our websites for AEO and SEO as well. So both, but don't worry, it's not like a completely different strategy. It's basically just taking the same content and structuring it a little bit differently. But I would say now it actually matters less which platform you are actually choosing to use, because what matters the most now is really the content that you're putting out there and the structure of your content. So there's absolutely still a place for blogging. You should absolutely still have a blog, but your blog's purpose, the intention of your blog, is really to build your authority in your subject matter area so that LLM platforms like Claude, like ChatGPT, etc., will recommend you to other people, will pull information from your website, and will see you as an authority in that space. And same with Google, right? For SEO purposes. So the content matters a lot more than the platform that you're actually choosing. And so I think the other piece that I want to add to this is that I've seen many, many, many times how choosing a platform like WordPress can be hindering for a lot of people because it is challenging to update. It's challenging to build. I know from firsthand experience, I have built WordPress sites, and I've also built Wix sites. I've built Kajabi sites. I have built sites on most of the major platforms. And WordPress is significantly harder, like significantly harder. So people end up spending a lot of time working on their website when they don't necessarily need to be. Platforms like Wix or Squarespace make your life way easier. They provide you with templates to be able to use. And so just a lot more user-friendly, a lot easier to get something that's really visually appealing off of the ground. So generally, in most cases, I'm recommending to people to use a Wix or a Squarespace because it's going to be the easiest way for you to just get something off the ground. A lot of website developers or designers use Wix and Squarespace too. You can hire someone to build it on WordPress as well. But what I would consider there is, well, you probably still have to do the updates. So anytime you want to change something on your website or add a blog post, like you'll still have to know how to do that. But all that to say, I do generally recommend one of those platforms like a Wix or a Squarespace, because right now, like what matters most is the quality of the content and the structure of how you're putting it out there. So like, are you structuring your blog post so that it's grouped into questions that are things that people are actually searching for in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever? And so therefore those LLMs have an easier time like parsing through your content and matching your content to what people are actually searching for. So all that to say, don't overthink this. The other thing too is you can switch as time goes on. So like I'll tell you about my website journey. My first probably 2 or 3 websites were built on WordPress. And then I switched to Wix, and then I switched to Kajabi, and then I switched back to WordPress, and then I switched back to Kajabi. So it's not a big deal. Like just choose something and just move forward with it and just start putting content out there into the world. Start building your authority in a space. Yeah, the platform is really not the determining factor here. So I hope that that's helpful. Okay, let's talk about non-one-on-one business ideas. So here's the scenario. I've been seeing clients one-on-one for about 2 years, and I'm starting to feel the income ceiling. I want to add another revenue stream to my business, but I'm not sure where to start. What are some realistic ways that dietitians can make money outside of traditional one-on-one sessions? And how do you know which one is the right next step for where you are at in your business? So I think this is a really important moment. If you find yourself here, this is a really important moment for some deep self-reflection around what do you actually want to do and what do you actually want your business to look like? If you're seeing other people on there do brand work and you're like, oh, that's not really for me. Like, I don't really see myself like going on, news stations and like doing a segment on a brand. But I feel like I should because that's what other dietitians are doing. Like, don't do it just because you see other dietitians doing it, or like, oh, I see other people having a group program. I feel like I need to do that because that seems to be the next best step. But if you don't really want to do that, then don't do that. There's many other ways that you can build out revenue streams in your business. So step 1 is, I think, some deep self-reflection here around what exactly is this thing that I want to build out. But then the other step here too is to ask yourself, now after 2 years of working one-on-one with clients, I would guess that you should have probably a pretty good sense of a next product. You probably do, because working with people gives you insight into what their needs are and what their desires are and what they want. And so, for example, if you're finding that you've been working with, let's say you've been working with in the prenatal space, you've been working with moms who are pregnant or postpartum, and you've been seeing the same thing over and over and over again, which is that they really, really struggle with, like, every single one of your clients has the same challenge around, let's just say, like, feeding themselves when they have low energy, getting enough calories when they have low energy. So that is a signal as to what your next thing could be. So maybe that then turns into, okay, well, I think maybe I'll come up with some sort of a digital product that helps to address this challenge or answer this question. Maybe that looks like a membership. Maybe that looks like an ebook. Maybe that looks like a print book. Maybe that looks like a course with my one-on-one piece incorporated. And so, that really is step 2, is listening to what you've been hearing and creating something based on the pain points that you're seeing. But the other thing I would say too here is, if this is really just an issue around wanting to make more money working with people one-on-one, but you're still liking working with people one-on-one, well, like, sometimes the lowest hanging fruit could just be adding something to that offer suite, whether it is switching to packages. So, being able to ensure that you're working with clients for a longer period of time, so your revenue is increasing that way, or adding leveraged items to your packages, so things that people purchase with the package, and so things like meal plans, things like recipes, things like maybe a course component, maybe an ebook, etc. Like, the world is really your oyster here. There's so many things you could add as leveraged items, but are there things you could add that will give people added value that will help to bring you in more revenue? And you don't actually have to add a completely new revenue stream to your business. Like, we're just leveraging what we're already doing. So that would be another piece that I would explore, is some of the low-hanging fruit. But then there's always other revenue streams. And so I'll talk through what I've seen other dietitians do in terms of other revenue streams in their businesses. So like, when I started my business, I made my full-time income on consulting and freelancing. So actually working for other companies and being their dietitian subject matter expert. So freelancing, consulting, recipe development, brand work. So getting hired by brands to do work for them, whether that's recipes, whether that's writing, whether that's whatever, marketing, content development, etc. Media work. So, actually getting hired to do segments on news channels or TV shows or whatever about nutrition. There's online courses, there's group programs, there's membership sites, there are ebooks, there's print books, there are, literally the world is kind of your oyster here. And I think that's what's actually so cool about dietetics, is that we have the opportunity to create revenue in so many different spaces and not just one channel. So there's so much opportunity here. And I think this is a conversation I have a lot with dietitians, and it's something that takes quite a bit of reflection. And it's something that, you can really think outside the box here too. You don't just have to do something because everyone else is doing it. Or even if you've never seen another dietitian do something, but you have an idea, cool. I love that. I think that's amazing. So this is something we're going to explore quite a bit at the summit, the Dietitian Success Summit in September for the Entrepreneur Pass people, because we'll be talking about what is your financial goal, and then how do we actually break that down in terms of your offer suite, and what offers at what price point are actually going to get you to that revenue goal. Because usually hitting a revenue goal means that we are adding together multiple streams of revenue to create one big revenue goal. So lots of ideas for what to do outside of one-on-one counseling as a dietitian. Okay, let's talk about question number 3, which is podcasting as a marketing opportunity. So I've been thinking about starting a podcast as a way to grow my audience and attract more clients, but I'm not sure if it's actually worth the time investment, especially when I'm already stretched thin. Is podcasting a viable marketing strategy for dietitians right now, or is it an oversaturated space that isn't worth getting into? Okay, so to answer the end of that question first, is it an oversaturated space that isn't worth getting into? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I still believe that podcasting is a super underutilized platform for anyone, and particularly people talking about health and nutrition. And why is it underutilized? Well, it's underutilized because it is work. It is work. It is effort, right? Like, a podcast works when you are committed to contributing to it regularly and to building that regular loyal following. It's so underutilized because there's so few people that are ready or willing to do that. And so if you are someone who is ready and willing to do that and is like, you know what, yes, I want a platform where I can just share long form content of what is on my heart, what I am thinking about, what I'm teaching, what I'm talking about, etc., then a podcast could be a really, really, really awesome fit for you. So I would say if you're committed to creating something like this, then I would always recommend a podcast. Why would I always recommend a podcast? Well, because in my opinion, podcasting is one of the most, if not the most effective strategies for building trust and consequently growing your business, getting more clients. When somebody is sitting down to listen to you talk about a topic for however, whether it's 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever, like you have the ability to build a relationship with them that Instagram or any of the other platforms, email marketing, whatever, just cannot accomplish. Because it is just like the opportunity for you to infuse your beliefs, your personality, your philosophies, your how you work with clients, success stories, recommendations, like what it actually looks like to work with you, etc. There's really no other place to be able to do that in this way than a podcast. And never mind really understanding someone's personality, right? Like I think a lot of people, and I remember this from one of the clients that I've worked with for quite some time. She was like, the reason why I've wanted to work with you as a business coach is because I would listen to your podcast and I felt like we were the types of people who would sit down and like have a glass of wine together and just have a great chat. And I was like, yeah, that is really what podcasting is all about, is like we are building a relationship by you listening to this podcast and you hearing me and hearing what I talk about. And you, in hearing me and hearing what I talk about, are deciding if I'm the right fit for you. If you feel like, you know, I have the expertise to help you, if you feel like you and I would be a good personality fit, like those are such important factors. And again, there's just really not a platform like podcasting to be able to build that connection with people. Now, if you're sitting there being like, yeah, but oh my gosh, I want that, but the thought of having my own podcast is super intimidating. I just don't know if I can commit to that. Well, luckily, there's other ways to do it. You can be a guest on someone else's podcast, like pitch yourself as a guest. I receive podcast pitches every single day for people to be guests on the podcast. Now, I've been largely just sort of putting those in a folder for now because, as you know, as I've talked about before, like while my time is limited, while I still have a baby at home, I'm choosing this format, just solo podcast episodes, because it allows me to be able to record them whenever I can, whenever I have time, versus interviews. Like I'm actually scheduling an interview with somebody, that takes more coordination. It requires that like set time in the calendar, which is really challenging for me to accommodate right now. But all that to say is like, pitch yourself. Like podcast hosts are always looking for people to talk to, right? Like, and I know personally, like I've bought so many things based on interviews that I've heard on podcasts. Now, I listen to a lot of business podcasts, so I'm always in the market for like new entrepreneurship related courses, tools, coaching, whatever. But like, I would say every person that I've worked with from a business coaching perspective, or like courses that I've bought or whatever, have been because I learned about people through podcasts. So podcasting is like so lucrative. And yeah, I just think it's a really great channel to be able to build your audience, to be able to build trust with prospective clients, to be able to get prospective clients. So I always like, if somebody asks me if they think that that's a good avenue for them, I'm always like, yeah, absolutely. I'll share an example too, actually, of a dietitian that is in our entrepreneurship membership, and her only marketing channel is her podcast. And she has a very niche area of practice. And so she's the only podcast that's talking about this niche, nutrition in this niche. And she uses that podcast to fill her group programs. And she will repost segments from the podcast on Instagram. So that's how she's been using the podcast to be able to also be on Instagram. And she will share out podcast episodes to her email list. And so it's one platform, one piece of long form content that she's creating, and then she can distribute it in so many ways. And it's, again, a way for her to build authority, build expertise, build a client base. So I love podcasting. I love it. We have a whole course on how to start a podcast within the entrepreneurship membership. Just FYI. Okay, well, I've done it. I've successfully recorded this episode before my team meeting, which is awesome. I love when things happen that way. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you are getting a lot from this episode, if you've enjoyed it, then I would so appreciate you leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's always so incredibly helpful. That's how the podcast is shared. That's how it gets to more people. So I would so appreciate that. But otherwise, I hope you have an awesome week, and I will see you in the next episode.